You are listening to The Art of Sales. Everyone sells every day, and this is your source for conversational, real-world sales and prospecting methods that you are comfortable using and that get results. You'll help people buy instead of pushing them into being sold. Here's your host, Art Subcheck.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. As you know, we like to have guests on here from time to time, but not your typical guests. Guests who are really walking their talk and out there doing significant things in the sales field. And today we have one such person. Scott Love is one of the leading experts in the world on the topic of recruiting, and he recruits at a very high level. That's right. He is on the phone every day. He's the founder of the Attorney Search Group, a legal recruiting firm that focuses on law firm mergers, group mergers, and partner level placement for international law firms in Washington and New York. For many years, Scott ran a sales and recruiter training company and then sold it to focus solely on his search practice. He's written hundreds of articles on recruiting, sales, and client development, and is also a popular speaker to legal-related groups on law firm growth, culture, and recruiting. Scott's a graduate of the United States Naval Academy. He's a former naval officer, an author, and a professional watercolor artist. He's married with 2 children and a puppy named Ruby and lives in Northern Virginia. So first of all, Scott, thank you for your military service, and also thank you for joining us on the show today.
Art, thank you. This is great being here as your guest today. I'm really excited about this.
I was trying to think back when we first met, and I believe you may have contacted me to be on one of your interviews for when you were running your training company.
Back in 2009, I think you were on one of the very first episodes of my podcast that I did. And I was podcasting before. I mean, I quit podcasting before most people got into it, where I had, and it was just because it's for my niche, very narrow. And I think you were one of the first guests on that. I remember reading your book in the bookstore, Smart Calling, How to Take the Fear of Failure and Rejection Out of Cold Calling. I'm like, man, what can I learn from this thing? I teach this stuff. And I'm flipping through it and I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. Flip it through a little bit more. Oh, that's a good idea. Oh, that's a good idea. I got to get this book. And I've read your book 3 times, and it's probably due for another read. And so, yeah, Art, we go way back, and you don't know it, but you've been a big part of the things that I've done because so much of it came from your content.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. I wasn't expecting that, but I greatly appreciate that. And you have done some amazing things in your field. So we want to hear about that, but I always like to go way back with my guests. So tell us, what was your first paid sales job?
It was commission-only radio station advertising sales for an AM radio station in Suffolk, Virginia.
That's a tough sell from what I know. I've had a lot of people over the years who've been subscribers and customers selling radio ads, and well, especially today, it's even tougher. But tell me about that. What did that consist of?
Well, it was funny because I interviewed with another radio station, and I'd just gotten out of the Navy, and people said, "Oh, you should get into sales." I'd never done any sales training, but on the way to the interview, I listened to a Zig Ziglar tape, and he said, "Be enthusiastic. Put some enthusiasm in your sales." And so the sales manager. And this is of the big FM station in downtown Norfolk that I was interviewing at for commission-only job. He gave me a pen, and he said, "Sell me this pen." And I didn't know anything about asking questions. Well, what type of pen would you like? What are the problems with your pen? What's the criteria of a pen you'd buy today? How would the documents you sign make a difference? And I didn't know about that. All I did was, I'm going to be enthusiastic. So I grabbed the pen. And I said, "It's a shiny, shiny pen. You should buy this pen. I'm excited about this pen." And I didn't get the job. So I'm the guy that didn't get a commission-only radio station advertising job at the FM station, but the AM station was, that was it. So I go around to small poodle groomers and people that sold insurance or other small businesses, people that didn't have any money, and try to sell them radio station advertising. And I did that for a few months, and then I got into telecom sales. after that.
As I always tell people, whatever sales job you were in, regardless of how hard it was, is always a great training and great experience. I mean, I tell people if they've done collection work or if they've done any type of consumer telemarketing, absolutely great experience.
Absolutely right.
So what else did you do after that, and how did you get into recruiting?
Yeah, so after that, I was selling long distance, and this is back when it was like in the early 90s, mid 90s, when it was 25 cents a minute. And to make a long story short, you're selling a product that everybody else sells. It's a commodity. And the company I was with called BTI, they're a regional inter-exchange carrier. They had an intensive 2-week sales training program, and they taught us how to sell a commodity at margins higher than our competition. And a lot of it was based on spin selling. What's the situation? What's the problem? What's the implication of that problem? Well, let me tell you about the need and the payoff of that. And so I was adept at a young age of learning how to ask good questions. And I saw that my prospects make a judgment about me based on the quality of questions that I ask. So I did that for about a year. And the office next to ours was a recruiting firm. And I thought, these guys are great. We'd play darts during lunch. I'd hang out with them. And they said, if you get into recruiting, and if you're really good at this, you can make $40,000 a year. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm never going to have this kind of an opportunity again. I must do this. And so I got into headhunting, into executive search back on July 15th, 1995, in the middle of the summer. And my first day on the phone, I said, I'm doing this forever.
Why was that? What caused you to say that?
I think it was just the rush I got by building trust with high-level prospects that had known me for less than 15 minutes. And I think just knowing that I'm making a significant contribution to an organization and making a good placement on the candidate side, I'm making a difference to someone in a very personal way, and knowing that I've earned that trust. And I think it's the emotional context of the job that I love, and what I love to this day. I'm just dealing with different types of people, but we're all pretty much the same. And that's what I love about this, Art, is that you don't have to shy away from what you do. You don't have to hesitate, because when you believe in what you're selling, when you believe in the service that you're providing, when someone gives you an objection, you have a duty, a responsibility to that person to overcome it. For example, today I've got a candidate that I'm presenting to firms. He said no to one firm that wants to meet him. And I have an obligation to him. I said, I think you're making a mistake by not talking to this firm. I think you should meet with them. Just 1 hour, cup of coffee. Worst case scenario, you're going to make a new contact that could result in referrals to you in the future. So just learning how to talk to people with that kind of nuance and that delicacy and moving things forward. It's a rush. I go to bed literally Sunday night. I'm like, I can't wait for Monday, man. That's great.
That's awesome. I want to dive deeper into the mechanics of your business, but there may be some people out there that aren't that familiar with it. I've done some training work with companies and recruiting over the years, and what always fascinated me about its uniqueness is that you're selling on both sides of it. Yeah. And that's both to get your engagements and then to find and persuade people to look at the positions like you mentioned. And then things change based on the job market. So just tell us briefly about the business and how important sales is on both sides of it.
Sure. So what recruiting is all about, it's about creating a mutual satisfaction of needs between two different parties. You've got the organization, the company, or in my case, I'm working with law firms, and they're looking to accomplish a strategic goal by hiring someone that fits a certain criteria, or sometimes a company will have a void. They need someone, and they need to find them, and they don't have the capabilities to find people who have a certain level of talent because everybody else is looking for people like that. So they work with recruiting firms, sometimes on a contingency or a retainer basis. Retainer basis means that you have a close relationship. They pay part of the fee up front, and there's more of a contractual relationship between the recruiter and the firm or the company. And then you go forth and you recruit the candidates. So you have to sell your services to the company. You have to allay any concerns, overcome objections, negotiate the fee, set up working expectations, lay out a plan, get all the people on board who are going to be on board, engaged in the process, and then go forth, create a recruiting plan, and execute. A lot of it in the recruiting side is finding people that fit a certain profile, building trust with them, bringing down the walls, getting them to listen to you, and then asking questions so that you find out what their hot buttons are, and then you present your client's opportunity. And then that's where the fun begins. Now you have to submit the candidate to the firm and make sure that everybody's okay going forward for the first interview, debrief both sides afterwards. Are we going forward? Let's have more meetings. Then the firm does diligence, and then now we're getting involved in the offer negotiation, and even there's a greater level of negotiation skills that take place at that point. And then at the very end, sometimes it doesn't work out. So you can go through all this, and it's like creating a sand mandala. You spend all this time creating a magical, beautiful design, and it gets wiped away with the sand being poured down into the river, and you've got nothing to show for it. So a lot of the concepts that I follow are game theory. I don't spend any time on anything unless I know I have a high likelihood of a favorable outcome. And I try to accomplish multiple goals for everything that I do, so that if my primary objective does not go fulfilled, I still have something to show for my time. So I say there's more poker theory in recruiting than there is in a real life poker game, because it's all about people and probabilities and nuance and the delicacy of how you manage information. And there's nothing else like it out there. It's a double sell. You're absolutely right. It's a double sell the whole way through from start to finish.
So you're having to sell the client on why they should use you. Well, first of all, you got to create interest so you can get into the conversation. Then you have to sell them on why they would use you. Then you have to sell them on them giving you an engagement. Then you've got to go find people who are, the good ones are obviously working somewhere already. So you have to convince them why they should take a look at another opportunity.
Yeah.
Then
and
when you get them both
all your competition at the same time too. All the other headhunters out there.
Exactly. So, and then you, like you said, you're doing the negotiation in between to meet in the middle some way, somehow. Absolutely. I would imagine it's a lot easier for you now that you're successful. You've been in business for a while. What was it like when you first had to start out? You didn't have any contacts and you have to go sell yourself to these high powered partners in law firms.
A lot of it was having the moxie to overcome that imposter voice of you're not going to fit in there. You're not a former lawyer. And I remember I had one client that took a chance on me, and I did really well with that firm. I had some success in other areas. But whenever I looked at, and my whole philosophy is that in resilience from that adversity, you can find gems of truth, gems of resources that you can harness and actually use to leverage and move yourself forward. So when people would say, oh, how can you help us? You're not an ex-lawyer. I say, that's exactly why you should work with me. What do you mean? Well, I'm a professional salesperson. I'm a professional deal maker. I understand nuance. I know how to smell money. I can see opportunities because I understand high-level client development. I know how to get partners in front of your firm. So a lot of it, Art, starting out was just in my own head. And of course, with anything, there's a learning curve, figuring out what's the best way to make good long-term placements in the shortest amount of time. And then also all the other things that go into it, such as being able to stay on the phone, stay motivated, overcome all the massive adversity that our business brings every single day, and keep my head in the game.
Let's focus on that a little bit more, because I think it's something that anybody new in a sales position runs into, especially if they're not a subject matter expert and they are talking to experts. So one thing you mentioned was the imposter syndrome. So if you're starting out, you're not the attorney and you're feeling that, what did you say to yourself? How did you overcome that initially so you could go out there and sound confident when you were making those calls?
Two things. I would pre-play in my mind. I would imagine the scenario in my mind as if I was, like hitting the golf ball in your mind before you take a shot. Like Jack Nicklaus said, I never hit a golf ball that I first didn't see go in the hole in my mind's eye. So I would pre-play. I'm on a call with a law firm partner. I'm going to recruit him, or a managing partner of a firm. I want to sell him my services. I would sit back and I would pre-play that call in my mind. And then I would replay. I would look for past similar situations. Well, I did the same thing just yesterday and they want me to recruit for them. Or I did the same thing yesterday and I've got 3 new candidates. I would replay those past conversations to build my confidence level. And I really believe, and you know this, that recruiting and golf and sales are very similar. It's 95% mental and the other 5% is mental. It's all in your head.
I'm a lot better at sales than I am at golf. But great analogies. What were some things that you learned early on that were keys to your success and things that you still use today?
I would say knowing that people are not going to do anything unless it serves their own interests. And that's not bad. It just means don't get your feelings hurt. Nice people don't return phone calls. That they don't care about how impressive of a person you are. You have to understand what motivates them. That intrinsic motivation is what guides everything. And then secondly, I believe to some extent, building a relationship with a prospect is not the thing you should focus on. You should focus on trying to solve a problem. I really believe this, that high-level executives, high-level people, they don't need another friend. They need solutions to problems. Once you have shown them that you can solve a problem, then you've earned the right to build that relationship. I think it has to do with, there are three questions in their mind that they're asking themselves as they get a call from someone like me or somebody else selling whatever it is we sell. Number one is, can you solve my problem? Number two is, can I trust you? And number three is, do I like you? And most people try to answer question number three, and they get it out of order. Hi, my name's Scott Love. How are you today? Just like you talked about in your book. Don't ever say, how are you today? Because that means, what are you selling? Don't ever try to build rapport, but you have to look for that window where now you can make a case for the value. Otherwise they can shut you down. You want to try to build rapport, quick connection. We both went to the Naval Academy or whatever. We have a common friend and so, and he suggested I give you a call, whatever it is. But then at that point, it's all about the value in their mind because they're busy. They're looking at their watch. They don't really care about your unique selling proposition until you have earned the right to really make that pitch. So those are a couple of things that I've learned early on that have stayed with me every single day.
I would encourage people to rewind about the last 2 minutes, go back and listen to all that because that was just pure gold, something that I teach all the time. You worded it in a little bit different way, and I'm going to go back and listen to it. So true. There are so many organizations that I work with, and I'll sit down with a sales rep and we'll look at their prospect list or their account base, and they'll say they're building relationships and they have a lot of friends out there, but not a lot of revenue. And that goes towards your point. People want to know, how are you going to help me? What are you going to do for me?
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
So let's drill down to some techniques, some tactical things. What are some must-dos in your business that can be used by anyone in any type of sales?
Right. I would say, number one, maybe less tactical and more within your thought model. And then I'll kind of go more tactical. I would say forget about your commission. Don't focus on that. Focus on the contribution. If you focus on the contribution, you'll make more commissions. And it's almost counterintuitive that in my business, it's pretty easy to see that it's a derivative success business. I only make money if I create a mutual satisfaction of needs between two different people. If you can focus and ask questions to your prospect, spin selling, what's the situation? What's the problem? Well, how will this problem being solved improve your condition? Let's say if you can't solve it, how would that hinder you from reaching your goals? And now you've got them on your side because you're asking questions at engagement. It's also giving you information that you can use when you make your presentation. So I would say the thought model of don't focus on the commission, focus on the contribution. But in terms of tactical things, I would say measure the metrics that lead to a sale. For example, like I told you before, I've had some pretty big wins, but I get more excited about those widgets that I put on the conveyor belt rather than the end product because I'm closer to it. My deals can take a year, 18 months to close. So I focus on those metrics that lead to a closed sale. For me, it's submissions and sendouts, individuals that I send to a client. I think you should meet with this candidate, and then the meetings that take place. I focus on setting a certain number of those each month. Every day, I measure three things. I have an Excel spreadsheet. I measure three things. One of them, I document my greatest achievement for the day. What was a win? What was one thing I did really well? I met with had a meeting with the firm leadership. They want to engage me on a search to find a merger partner. That was a win. The next column. What was one lesson learned? A lot of times it's something that I screw up on, Art, because I make a lot of mistakes, and I document those. I didn't call that guy back soon enough, and he took a job through another headhunter. And then the third thing I document is my phone time. I have my executive assistant, because it's just me and a full-time executive assistant. Her job is to dedicate her life to keep me on the phone. I get a letter from the government about some tax. Figure this out. Read it. Take care of it. Let me know you took care of it. I don't deal with that because it's all about me staying on the phone. So I document my phone time. So at the end of the day, she goes into my VoIP system and she extracts from our call accounting feature how much time did I have on the phone each day. And so I can see my phone time. And that shows me I'm not hitting my goal. I need to keep reaching the phone time. I need to keep pushing it up. And then I use that sheet. I go back and I look over my lessons learned and I look for trends. I look for mistakes that I'm repeating. And I've seen some last year that I was able to fix. And, some of those where I'm not getting back to people quick enough and I'm losing opportunities. And I've lost out probably on about 3 or 4 deals in the last 12 months that I could have had it if I'd only not hesitated. And then anytime I'd see a specific issue that repeats itself each month, if I needed to, I would focus on a character quality that would help ameliorate that deficit. And so those are some tactical ideas I think that anybody in sales can do. Look at what are the inputs that lead to a closed sale and measure those. What are the measurements you can measure every day so that you can get those widgets on the conveyor belt?
So really what we're talking about here is the process and focusing on the process. And when we do that and do it in a quality way, and I know you're big on placing quality calls, not just putting phone time in just to put phone time in. Mm-hmm. But when you control what you can, which is all those things that you mentioned, then the results will come, which goes back to your other point. If somebody's just tried to focus on the commission or the sale, then what happens is people become desperate. But if you're focusing on, again, what you control, and then also learning from what doesn't go right, like you just mentioned, that's how we get better.
Absolutely right.
Great stuff. So you mentioned some mistakes that you make. What are mistakes that you see other recruiters out there make in general, and maybe things that other salespeople in other industries
make?
That's
a great question, Art. I would say focusing too much on themselves. I mean, that's really it. And especially if you're dealing with higher level people, they are soul readers. They can pick up on people that are phonies in a few seconds over the phone. So that's what I would say is take your eyes off yourself. Sure, you want to make a lot of money. You want to do really well in sales. But, and one of the things I do every day, I have this mantra. And I do this. It's a ritual. It's a physical ritual. Whenever I make the bed, or if my wife's still sleeping, it's when I'm leaving and I'm going to work. I have this mantra. I tell myself these 4 things. Number 1, I say, today is going to be the most exciting day of my life. Everything I touch turns to gold. Everybody I talk to wants to do business with me. And then the 4th thing is almost like a meditation, Art. It's almost like, in many ways, a prayer. Put me in the path of those whom I can serve. And it reminds me that it's not all about me. It's service. And that it's an ask. Put me in the path of those people whom I can serve. It's about me serving them. So I think those might be some tactical ways as well that people can reinforce that it's not about us. It's about the other person that's buying that product or that service.
So true. It always goes back to what Zig said. Tell me,
right.
What's it like? And I've dealt with a lot of companies that call into law firms and attorneys. Tell me from your perspective, what is it like talking to attorneys who are trained in questioning themselves? What are some things that you experience?
I don't have a lot of them hang up. And in fact, many of them will thank me for calling them even if they're not interested because of the way I approach people. And I approach them almost with a business tone at first. Hello, Gary. Yes, my name's Scott Love. We haven't talked before, but I need to talk to you about something I'm working on with one of my clients. Do you have a couple of seconds? Well, sure. What's this about? So they think this is a business call. If I was like, hi, Gary, how are you today? They'd shut me down. And so I think, that might be that's one thing I've seen in dealing with people like that, is that these are guarded, untrusting individuals that hate change. And they have this wall. And so that's what I try to do is talk to them in a way that the wall comes down. And it's almost like this predictable pattern in my conversation. It starts with the business tone, almost adversarial, but not quite. It's business. I don't thank them for taking my call. I don't thank them. Well, thank you for your time. No, you should be thanking me because of what I can do for you, because I'm the guy with the Willy Wonka ticket that could change your life. You never know. I'm in the green grass business. You just never know what's out there. So I think changing the self-concept, I shouldn't be thanking them for my time, for their time. They should be thanking me. So I approach people that way. And then at some point, and this is something I learned from you, I say, I know you get lots of calls from other headhunters. And at that point, the inflection changes to a little bit more personable. And then if it's appropriate at key times, I try to insert subtle humor that's very light. It's almost playful. And at the right place in the conversation, it changes that relationship. Now there's an emotional context to it because they chuckled at a question I asked them and the way I did it. And that's kind of my style, is just a little bit of playfulness at the right time when I've earned that right to be that way with them. And that kind of moves that relationship a little bit forward. And this is all happening within the matter of 5 or 6 minutes.
So you're going into the call, positioning yourself at a peer level, not as a vendor attorney type relationship, which I love, which really everybody should do. And you're not using corporate speak. You're speaking at their level. Let's talk about even before you get to that person. One of the most common questions I get is, how do you get to decision makers? And I know attorneys, or particularly partners at big firms, are well guarded. So what kind of things do you do to get to that decision maker?
Sometimes I'll call them direct. And I think if you have that gravitas, at least, and it's not in who you are, it doesn't matter about your pedigree or who your daddy was or anything. It's how do you see yourself? And they can pick up on that. Sometimes I'll get referrals. So, for example, I'm trying to get a referral to help a friend out, and I was able to find out who's on the board of this group. I reached out to him. I used my relationship to get a referral to the decision maker, and now I'm in. So I think that's always good, trying to find a common connection, or if there is a legitimate story where you show that they can that there's a highly specialized problem that you can solve that you know that they have. That tends to get people to open up to you a little bit more easily also.
I like it. Now, for those of you in the audience, I'm sure you can pick up on Scott's a pretty cerebral guy. Everything that he's telling us just wasn't off the top of his head. These are things that he has been using. He's tested, that he teaches as well. And he's got this technique that, Scott, this technique that you advocate. And I'd like you to tell our audience about it. It's something that is used after you've heard several no's. But it doesn't sound cheesy. Go through that technique with us. Explain what it is.
Oh, the come on, dude.
Yeah, the come on, dude.
Just take the meeting. And you have to have the right kind of rapport. So no, if they're closed to you, it's not going to work. But if I've got the right kind of rapport, no, I don't think I'm interested in that firm. Well, you told me about this. No, I just don't think so. Well, you told me about this also. No, I just don't know. I'm like, listen, come on. It's just a meeting. Just take the meeting over coffee. I don't say the word dude with the guys I'm talking to, but I'll just say, just take the meeting. And then I try to set it up. Worst case scenario, it's just an hour out of your life. Best case scenario, it could change your life. So I try to do it that way. I just make it really playful. And I think you've got to use your own style. If you work, the people that you're dealing with, you got to find a way that fits with you. It's congruent with who you are. And it's also receptive to the people that you're talking with.
So it's just pretty much, just go ahead and do it. Just come on. So you're just kind of disregarding what they're telling you and saying, yeah, whatever, let's just go ahead and do it. And that actually reminds me.
The caveat, by the way, is if I believe it's in their interest to do so. If it's just a commission, I can't say that. But if I believe that there is the chance of this solving their problem, then I have to get them to take that meeting.
Pretty quickly, this reminds me of an experience I had last summer. Similar technique, and I had written about it, but I haven't talked about it here. I was in Positano, Italy, and my girlfriend and I were, after having breakfast, we walked across the street. We're walking down the street. There's this nice little boutique. And she said, well, let's go in there. So we go in. And while I'm waiting for her to try some things on, I'm looking at some shirts and shorts. And as I picked one up, the sales lady came over and she said, oh, that would look good on you. I said, oh, I really don't need any more shirts. She goes, oh, no, just try. Just try. And then about 5 shirts later, I walked out of there. So it's a great technique. So Scott, we could probably talk for hours, and I'd love to have you on again, but we're going to wrap this up. What final advice do you have for anyone in sales, really in any industry?
I would say two things. One of them is to document your daily metrics that lead up to a sale every single day at the end of the day, and review that. And then secondly, come up with a mantra, because sales is a game it's a head game. Come up with some sort of a mantra that changes your emotional state, because you and I both know, Art, that our emotions affect performance. And if anybody who's listening doubts that, look at any high performing athlete, and they have mastered the art of emotional management, because their emotional state affects how they perform. How we feel affects how we behave. If your emotions are not in an optimal state, then it's going to affect your performance. And I think there's a variety of things you can do: journaling, breathing, meditation, but I'd say start with mantras every day. Tell yourself, today's going to be the most exciting day of my life. Everybody I touch turns to gold. Everybody I talk to wants to talk to me. Start with that and see if it makes a difference.
That is so true. And as I always say, about 90% of what we accomplish is due to how we feel when we're doing it. And there might be some naysayers out there, and they look at affirmations and meditation. They say that that's woo woo. Well, all I have to say is just look at the successful people who are doing it, including yourself. Scott, this has been awesome. And in every episode, we reach a certain point.
Your attitude will be I am. Every way you'll never feel what they say. It's the art of the sales. Quote of the day.
That's right. It's time for the quote of the day. It's one of our regular features. And Scott, I know that you've been inspired by many, many people in your career. And what is one of your favorite quotes? And tell us why that's important to you.
Sure. Dr. Ken Christian. And I don't know, did you ever know Ken Christian? He passed away last year recently. He spoke on peak performance. I met him at speakers conferences when I was involved in speaking a lot. And he helped me solve some significant performance challenges. That was his area of specialty. He wrote a book called Your Own Worst Enemy. And one of the quotes he gave me, he said, there's no such thing as failure, just feedback. If there's no mistakes, then it's going to release you to take the right kind of risks and to take more of them in the right sort of way. If there's no such thing as failure, just feedback, you have information that can be used to align your efforts in a more effective way.
I love that. And I always tell salespeople, don't look at any call as a failure, because if you learn something from it, then you got to win, just like you had mentioned before. Great quote. Scott, thank you again. How can people get in contact with you? And is there anything else you'd like to share? Any links, sites, anything at all?
Yeah, sure. My website, it's attorneysearchgroup.com, and it's all related to legal recruiting. It's a very niched area. I don't speak much anymore outside of the legal industry, unless it's a sales meeting that's happening in Las Vegas. Maybe I'd be interested. ScottLovespeaks.com is my speaking site, but again, I probably don't do more than a dozen speaking gigs a year. But I'd be happy to talk to anybody about that has any sort of exciting sales meeting. I use a lot of game theory metaphors in my presentations, because sales is just a game, Art, isn't it?
It is. It's a game, and many times people take themselves way too seriously, and they go down in flames as a result. Scott, thank you again so much. This has been awesome. I do want to have you on again, because I know you have so much to share.
Thank you, Art. This is great. Thank you very much for having me as your guest.
All right. Hey, everybody. I would like you to do a favor for a couple of your friends. Let them know about this show if you're getting value from it. Send them to our show site, which is theartofsales.com, theartofsales.com. And if you don't yet have my free ebook of 501 sales tips, telephone sales tips, you can go get that at my blog, which is smartcalling.com, smartcalling.com. Thank you again for investing your time with us today. Thank you again to Scott. Go out and make it your best sales day ever. I'm Art Sobczak.